call the meeting to order.
Sean Lucas,
Here.
Justin Orff,
Here.
Jared Giddens,
Here.
Aaron Peterson,
Here.
Darlene Graham,
Here.
Amy Hookstrat.
Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove any items from the consent agenda? Nope. Seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to our service awards. We have 2 service awards this evening. Our first is for our technical guru there in the back, Mr. Drew Douglas. Is 5 years with the city as communication things and stuff that change over time. Jimmy's not here, so Cindy, why don't
I
you
sure
say how
can say
great?
something about it. I think all of us could probably say something about Drew
I
Douglas,
think we could. Good or bad, right?
good or bad. Drew has the unfortunate, I guess, title of Communications Director because he has to take care of all the communications for every department within the city. Whether it's working with the police department on a lost child or a power outage, Drew handles all of that. He also does our videos and stuff like that. He's been instrumental in our strategic planning process that you guys were part of. And he's currently working on a branding project for the city, which will be exciting to roll out. So Drew has a very big role to fill, and I believe, if you all would probably agree with me, that he has brought our communications level up quite a ways within the city. So we appreciate him. He's a huge asset. He's great to be around. He's good to work with, and I appreciate him every single day he's here.
All right. It's a very good job for me throwing you under the bus like that, Cindy. And our other service award is for Carrie Brown, 25 years with utility billing. Wow, 25 years, that's a lot. Oh,
Mayor, Council, my name is Brian Hawk. I'm Utility Billing Supervisor for the city. Representing Carrie, she regrets to not be here tonight. The thing about Carrie, she is one of those employees that I wish I could duplicate or wish I could replicate. When I took the job with the city a few months ago and I learned of the tenure of some of the employees that I was going to be working with, it was probably the #1 draw to come into something that you have somebody with 25 years experience, 15 years experience, and things like that. It makes my job tremendously easy to be able to do, and I really appreciate the ability to be able to do that. In her tenure, Carrie has served Nixa residents in multiple roles, including the mowing crew, recycle center operator, court clerk, and for the last 20 years in the utility office. She continues to exhibit qualities of an exceptional employee. She understands the realm and responsibilities of her job. She executes the overarching goals of the department and provides excellent customer service to the community. She's established and maintained excellent rapport with Nixa residents, her colleagues, and other departments of the city, and is a valued team member to the city. Thank you.
thank you. Do you want a picture with yourself, Drew?
I can take it.
That sounds fun.
It's not hard to take a picture.
reading the right one. Okay. All right, we'll move on to our proclamations. If I remembered my glasses. Because I would never be able to do this. Whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week, which began in 1926, was expanded to become Black History Month. And whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our communities, as well as have an opportunity to gain a deeper understanding of African American history. And whereas the city of Nixa continues to work towards becoming an inclusive community in which all citizens, past, present, and future, are respected and recognized for their contributions and potential contributions to our community. And whereas the city of Nixa has implemented multiple steps within its strategic plan to bring diversity and inclusion initiatives to the city, such initiatives should include the Listen, Encourage, Advocate, Demonstrate, Lead for short, events. And whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our nation's attention to the continued need to battle racism and to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals. And whereas the city of Nixa is proud to honor the history and contribution of African Americans in our community, now therefore I, Brian Steele, Mayor for the city of Nixa, do hereby proclaim the month of February as Black History Month in the city of Nixa. We'll move on to the visitor section. Do we have any visitors signed up tonight?
We do. Jeremy Ely is our first visitor.
Good evening. I took public speaking online, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm here tonight because of a sewage backup that happened at my home, 640 Chitwood Lane in the South Haven subdivision, which is across from Matthews Elementary. That occurred on December 17th. My wife, Michelle, and I were getting ready to leave for a Christmas party, and my son came upstairs and he said, hey, there's something going on with the toilet. So we grabbed a plunger, went downstairs, tried plunging it. The bathtub was starting to overflow, and then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So I told them, go get some buckets and anything you can find to try to take care of this. So for about the next 15 minutes, we stayed on top of it. We're getting feces all over us, just raw sewage, bailing the stuff out into the yard until it just became so overwhelming that it completely flooded our basement. I was trying to call the city. It was after hours. The city's answering service wasn't working. And so I was trying to call plumbers and anybody I knew that knew anything about plumbing or what I could do to make this stop. Unfortunately, it was raining outside, so that was making it worse. So the gutters were filling up, and it was just building up in the basement. So we kind of gave up on the bailing out of sewage, and finally was able to get a hold of the city's answering service, and she was able to put a call in to Jason Ramos, who called me and said he was on his way, he'd get there as soon as he could. About 45 minutes later, he showed up and had a difficult time getting the manhole covers off. I don't guess they'd been off for quite a while. And so I actually had to assist him. I came and grabbed a sledgehammer, and I was beating on the manhole lids while he was prying them to get them loose. And each manhole cover we went to and popped up, sewage was just erupting out of the manhole. And so it was a pretty bad situation. And so when we finally got to the last manhole that it didn't erupt out of, he said, well, I think I know where the clog is, but I'm going to have to leave and go get help. So he left for a while, and he came back with Jason Stutzman, and they worked at it for quite a while and found the clog, and they cleaned up everything out on the streets. And when they were done with the cleanup, I was able to speak to Jason Stutzman, and he was very apologetic about that this had happened, and we're going to take care of this. You can't stay in your house tonight, obviously, so go stay in a hotel for a couple of nights. We'll take care of it, and we need to get somebody out here to get this cleaned up. So he asked me who I wanted to use, and I stated Paul Davis Restoration. while I was waiting on them, I had placed a call to see if they were available to do that type of work, and they said, yeah, just give us the go-ahead, just give us a call and give us a go-ahead. So I already had the local guy's number, and I gave it to Jason, and he put the call in and ordered the work to be done on the home. We decided that they would just come out in the morning. So we went and stayed in a hotel for the next 2 nights. Came back to the house, though, on the Saturday morning, the morning after, and Paul Davis Restorations showed up at about 9, and Jason came as well, so he could see what my basement looked like, what kind of damage was going on. And I believe he brought an iPad and took several pictures and walked around and to see the extent of the damage. And the people from Paul Davis, they were basically in hazmat suits, and they worked all day to suction out this raw sewage from my basement. And they had to remove the carpeting and trim, and they set up dehumidifiers and fans, and those ran for about 5 days. They came back out Monday morning and began tearing out, taking out the doors, the door casings, and they've all been ruined. Just everything in the basement's a total loss. So we're looking at a living room, my son's bedroom, who's down there, all the bedroom furniture, living room furniture, a lot of items in our John Deere room, everything in the bathroom. So also part of the process, Paul Davis sent out workers to basically separate items in the basement for things that were affected, things that were not affected, things that can be cleaned, and things that are ruined. And they had to inventory each item and boxed it up, and over about the next week or so, they hauled the stuff out of my house and have taken it to off-site storage. So at this point, my basement is bare bones. My son doesn't have a bed. Well, he does. It's my daughter's bed, so she doesn't have a bed. He lost a lot of clothing. There's been a lot of tears shed in our house, and in the meantime, the Monday after, I believe Jason and some of the other water department workers came out and investigated the sewer and to see what was going on with it, and they found a grease clog and I believe rags, and so this is actually not on my street. The clog was over on Jake Flood Circle, so probably about 8 houses down from mine. So it just so happened that since my house is a basement, and I believe it was at the tail end of one of the stems off of the sewer main, my house got the brunt of it. So they found this clog, and apparently there were some steps from the manhole that had been left down in there. And apparently the city had hired Ace Pipe Cleaning, a company out of Kansas City, to do some work over the last several years. But I guess it was August of 2020 when they did work in my neighborhood. So the city initially notified their insurance company, Travelers Insurance, and also told Travelers about what they have found in the sewers, and that they think that this other company left these steps in there, and that's what caused the grease to collect around and to eventually cause the clog in the sewer main in my neighborhood. So Travelers basically said, okay, well, we're not doing anything with this. This is on this other company. And so I know that the city notified this other company, and they looked at some pictures, and they said, no, that wasn't from us. So, and then the last several weeks, I had been given information on this Ace Pipe Cleaning's insurance company, and that insurance company was actually subbing out their adjusting work. The insurance adjuster was a separate company, and I was given that person's contact information. And left voicemails for this guy every day, sent him emails, never got a call back. Eventually, that got back to Ace Pipe Cleaning, that this guy's calling them and they don't know why. And so I actually got a call from Brian Dobson at Ace Pipe Cleaning. He said that they were doing an investigation, but that based off of the pictures that he saw, he said the steps looked like brand new steps. And he also mentioned that there had been some backup issues when they did the work in the neighborhood, and that they'd put notes in about that. And that he didn't think that they were going to cover anything, but to send them an estimate from Paul Davis whenever I received it. And because of COVID and the guy from Paul Davis, the project manager, his father passed away, he was out of town, so things have just, taken an extra time. The holidays, the city was closed. I understand certain things have happened, but over the last several weeks, we've just been in the dark about the situation, not knowing who's going to pay for this, just tons of anxiety, sleepless nights, and just a lot of stress. And it's stressful enough just the night of bailing out raw sewage and watching all of your personal belongings and half of your house destroyed. And I'm just tired of the stress. I'd like some advice. I talked to this Brian Dobson on Saturday, the guy from Ace Pipe Cleaning, and I said, "Hey, Brian, did you get that estimate from Paul Davis?" And he said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "But did the city not contact you?" He said, "We sent a letter out a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that stated that we've decided there's no way we had anything to do with this." So I said, "No, I've not been told. I'm not in the loop on anything. I'm just the guy that lives in the crappy house." So, I just,
Sure.
I'm not here to give anybody a hard time, but
we
I'm having
definitely
a hard time.
I understand your situation. Cindy or Nick, I know I received that email from you today, and I
did speak to Cindy.
the city administrator, was out today, but I forwarded that on to Cindy. I don't know what.
Yes, the incident was turned into our insurance that Monday that it happened, after it happened. They have denied the claim because they've said that we weren't negligent. It just happened. It was an accident. And we have a process in place to clean our manholes. And so they don't find that the city is negligent in any way. And so they've denied the claim. They turned it over to Ace Pipe Cleaning. At first, Ace Pipe Cleaning were saying that whatever they did, that they would make good on. Now they're saying that they don't think that the ladder rungs were left in there by them. The last email that I received was from our claims adjuster, Maurice Clark, and he was looking for more information, and I forwarded that to Mr. Stutzman, and Mr. Stutzman was getting more information on that, I believe. Trying to get more pictures and stuff like that for more evidence, I guess you'd call it.
So a claim's been made and it's just going through the process. And when you have multiple insurance companies involved, I understand the situation that you're in, and I hate it, but it's where we're at. So we're trying to get more information to our insurance claims individual as quickly as possible, because we're very cognizant of the effect that it's had on one of our residents.
So is there any way to
I did-
expedite this?
Mr. Ely did turn in his hotel receipt to me today, and I issued a check request. Well, actually Doug did. I had Doug sign a check request in order to process the hotel stay, and that check should go out, if not Thursday, Monday. It just takes a process, and we just didn't have that receipt. Mr. Stutzman was trying to get a hold of the project manager from Paul Davis to find out the cost of the mitigation, and we've yet to hear from him. I did suggest to Mr. Ely that he turn it in to his insurance company, State Farm, so that they could subrogate on his behalf.
Is there any way Mr. Healy can have a single point of contact inside City Hall and it be the only person that he has
Sure,
to call
he
and
can-
deal with?
Yeah.
Had a
He,
way of-
he called me a couple of weeks ago, and I was the one that told him that Travelers had denied the claim, gave him 2 different phone numbers to contact on the other insurance company, the Ace Pipes Cleaning's insurance company. And I thought he had been dealing directly with them. I did not know that they had quit, they had never contacted him back, until I heard from him today, basically.
I talked to Jeremy at length the other night about this, because he's in my district, and I've known Jeremy since he was a kid. So it just seems like, after we talked, that he's just being passed, it's just being pushed down. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault, but it's not his fault at all. They happen to be at the end of the sewer line and everything backed up to them. His insurance company, State Farm, said they would only pay up to $13,000 for this, and it's costing tens of thousands of dollars more to do the basic clean, because their whole basement is destroyed and everything in it. So I just wish we could find some way, maybe that one person contact is the thing, that we could help him get this nailed down to get it started processing, because nobody wants to take blame for it, I'm sure, but somebody's got to somewhere along the line,
Well, and what's the current condition of your basement? Is it down to studs and?
down to studs.
Yeah, down to stud, we've got sheetrock from here on up, but yeah, it's down to studs. The estimate from Paul Davis, that doesn't include any valuation to contents that are total loss, is $101,000. So you can imagine the stress. So with me, like she had mentioned about using our insurance as a claim, the sewage backup protection is 5% of the value of the house. So they came up with right around $12,000 or $13,000. So that wouldn't go towards anything that I need to get done now. Not to mention, I had a small claim already back in the fall. I had neighbors that had hail damage and had roofs replaced, and I had a roofer tell me that, yeah, you've got hail damage, so filed a claim, and they denied the claim. Said I had hail damage to my screens and to my gutters, but not to my shingles, miraculously. So anyways, so I've had a claim already in the
sounds about
last
right.
like 3 months ago, and my renewal is coming up in May. So I'm afraid if I file this claim, I'm going to get dropped by my insurance, or they're going to jack up my rate way high as a high-risk person. And yeah, they would subrogate, but I initiated a claim on this already, and was told to put that on hold after I was told Gallagher Bassett, this third party, was handling the claim. So that's all been put on hold. But I'm afraid that this won't be resolved by May, and the whole subrogation of State Farm getting their money back from whoever gets their finger pointed at the most, I guess. So I don't want to be without homeowner's insurance. I've already lost half the home, so I just feel like I'm in the middle of a lot of finger pointing, and I wish that somebody would step up and decide who is at fault. And that's why the city carries insurance. That's why this other company carries insurance. And I don't know what to do. I just.
Does your insurance company not want to do this subrogation?
Well, what they do for subrogation is they go to recover however much they need recovered, which would be $13,000.
But if you turn in all these other bills to them, they have to recover that too, right?
No, because they're not my attorney. They're not representing me as an attorney. They would just be going after them to get their money back. Whatever the rest of it is my problem. I've talked to them about that, the guy at the claims office. So they're not completely going to go to bat for me. So
Yeah, why don't we use Cindy as your point of contact with us, and she'll get everything with Drew and Jason and our insurance company, and try to contact the ACE insurance company too, and she can try to handle that for you and give you a direct kind of single point of where the process is and how get through as fast as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And if there's anything else that it's definitely something we should be paying, let's make sure that we get that paid as soon as possible.
And it's not only just paying for what's been done. I mean, sooner or later, my son would like to have a bed. You
Sure.
know, we'd like to start rebuilding.
Definitely understand.
And, I know it's gonna happen sooner or later, but I just, wanna let you all know the situation, because I don't know how many people here even knew about that, so.
Yep.
That's all I got.
I definitely understand. I had a house fire several years back, 2 small children, and, you know, had to find a place to live and get them all new clothes, and it's just, yeah, it's a very traumatic process, definitely.
Yeah. So,
Thanks for bringing it to our attention, Jay.
all right,
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you.
Thank you.
All right, any other visitors? We will, leave the visitor section open if anyone else would like to speak. And we will close the visitor section, and we'll move on to our presentations for the evening. Mr. Russell. Yep, you're first.
All right, that's okay. Drew, do I have a PDF up there for us? Well, first of all, thank you so much. And you know what, it's funny is that a lot of times, a lot of us have lots of great conversations about Nixa and what the Chamber's doing on a consistent basis, but sometimes it's kind of good to be able to come up here and just kind of give you an overview of where we're at and what's some of the big things we have going on, and it's kind of exciting times once again. Oh, does it work? Great, thanks, sir. Okay, so, that's me, and that's us. So let's just do some real quick fun facts real fast. We did purge a few members at the end of the year that hadn't paid their bills, so we're down to 523. We've been averaging about 550 to 575 as we go through a year, which is a strong number. I'd like to see us get to 600,000. Your Nixa Chamber is still operating on about a $450,000 budget, so we're attempting to do everything that we can, and that's on $450,000, which is not much more than a small business makes. And you're going to see some things that we're working on in 2022 that's going to really, hopefully, take some things to the next level. That $450,000 cooperates all of our salaries, of course, our staff, but utilities, and it facilitates a lot of our events, activities, the things that we do on a month-to-month basis. We do have some opportunities to increase that this year with some ticket sales at Sucker Days for the rides, and of course, if we can continue to increase and grow attendance and attract new members, that's going to also help us out. But we're also looking for some other funding sources for us in the near future. We had 199 businesses that are sponsoring at some level for the Chamber in 2022. And then, of course, last year we did 110 events, and that included meetings, ribbon cuttings, training, networking, and a lot more. So we're a very active active chamber, and we're going to continue to do those kind of things for our community in the best possible way that we can. And, we're maxed out on our big events. That doesn't include some of the small things that we also assist in, such as the mayor's tree lighting ceremony and those kind of events. That doesn't count as a chamber event, Creeping at the Crossroads, but we're very much engaged in those as well. Another fun fact I didn't put in the stat today, though, is we kind of analyze where our community's at economically. You guys know the sales tax numbers. We know the business license numbers. We saw the building permit numbers. If you want more information on that, you know where to look. It's in the agenda tonight. I did a little assessment of where we're at with our real estate property taxes. So how do we compare to our sister city in this county, which is Ozark? And that's the closest comparison I can get. I don't have Greene County numbers to look what Republic's looking like. But I will tell you, once again, we went from a total assessed value inside the city limits, and this is commercial and residential, of $281 million in 2021 or 20. To last year, we ended up $324 million, 324.8. So that's an increase of a little over $43 million, about 15.4%. Now, if we compare that to Ozark city limits are running somewhere right around 284.5. And then, of course, we're at 324, so we're outpacing Ozark by real estate assessed values of around $40 million. Keep in mind that this doesn't include nonprofit buildings such as big churches and those kind of things. They don't pay real estate taxes. So we still, when we look at it from maybe a fire protection district, they still got to provide fire protection for those type buildings, but they don't get to make money on them. But we're seeing that continued growth, and some of that is from what Cox Hospital would have showed up this year. That would have been a big growth that we had. But what the biggest side note on that is when we compare commercial versus residential, residential. Yeah, we're blowing them out in commercial or residential, but they're winning by about 28 million in total assessed value on commercial. So some fun facts there about our community, but that's still really good economic signs, guys. That means we're continuing to attract more and more people to our community. We got more and more people who are shopping local. As you know, we're up 10% in retail sales tax over 2020, which was also a record-breaking year, up 15% over 19. So we're continuing to see that growth, and I know that hopefully your Nixa Chamber is seen as one of those driving influencers in our community. I just took down a bunch of banners today that said "Be Vocal for Shop Local." All right, the big events this year that we're doing for our community, of course, obviously Sucker Day Music, Arts, and Crafts Festival, and that'll be coming up, and we're expanding that just a tad, looking at going into Sunday afternoon with this year's event. We'll be turning that special event permit in pretty soon, possibly, really likely, moving the parade to the Friday before to relieve the stress on the volunteers, and then yet also a lot of the people who are at the Sucker Day event, who are sponsors, could also participate in the parade that way. Maybe some of our food trucks could be driving in the parade and then saying, hey, see us at Sucker Day. So that might give us an opportunity to expand the reach of that. I know the little Miss Main Street dance, the pageant, they always want to be in the parade, but it's very difficult for them to do that Friday and then turn around and do the pageant on Saturday. Nixpo, well, that's just right around the corner. We're moving forward with that. Everything's looking really, really good. And we know everything's changing right now, but we saw 88,000 people at Arrowhead Stadium last night, so I'm pretty confident we can have us a Nixpo here in a couple of months. Sky High Fireworks Celebration, we're moving forward with that. Got our Chelsea James will be our headliner. Now, she's been at Sucker Day in the past, and I'm looking forward. She wants to bring a Martina McBride-style performance to Sucker Days, to the Sky High Fireworks Celebration coming up at the high school. Funding-wise, we're pretty well funded. We're breaking even on the fireworks show thanks to the help of the budget item that you guys put into the budget. Otherwise, we may have had to cancel it. I do need to figure out a way to increase maybe a little bit more income from that. I can't be in the business of breaking even at this point on some events. We have to be able to fund things that we need at the chamber. We're going to continue that and make sure that goes well this year. Reevaluate that for 23, making sure that we can secure funding. It's expensive to put on a big fireworks show, especially with the increase in the insurance that we need for that. Okay, and then of course Sucker Day, we're doing pretty good on that, and I think that's going to turn out really well. We may have a couple more sponsorship opportunities for a couple of our side events, and some of you may or may not know, most of you probably know, but I'm adding wrestling a show this year, so we're going to have professional wrestling coming to downtown Nixa on Saturday afternoon from 1 to 4. It's going to be fun. They're a fun troupe out of the Central Missouri area. They play the state fairs all across the region. It's good old-fashioned wrestling, and it's on a circuit. It's part of a deal where they're working towards a belt or something like that. I don't know all the details. Sean does. Sean Lucas, I found out, is an expert resident wrestling guy, so I may have to bring him in on some of the meetings that we have for that. So excited about that coming up for Sucker Day. And of course, Mayor, we got to get some sucker fish. We need more than 200 suckers next year. Okay, you guys, I hope everybody's downloaded the Experience Nixa app. We're a little over 3,500 users now, so it's growing. The Nixa Tour of Lights that we participated in this holiday season went very, very well. We had over 5,000 interactions with that, and our goal, again, is to continue to make sure that Experience Nixa is all about Nixa, where we are bringing in all facets, and we're expanding it just a tad now, because if you live in Nixa, you still want to know where the local zoos are, you want to know where the hiking trails are, the national parks, the local, conservation areas. So we're adding those elements to make that an all-encompassing app for our community. So please check that out if you haven't downloaded it. All right, what else we got? All right, let me talk to you about this now. This really took a big turn for me, and Councilmember Hookstrat was on the call with us as well. This was on Friday we did it. We looked over 180 sculptures.
146.
Okay, 146, because you made the poll, so she would know. Good. That's why we have great helpers. This was very eye-opening to me as we were on this Zoom call with 24 other communities throughout our state, a lot of them comparable in size, who have made the financial commitment to bring artwork and sculptures to their town. And you could hear them talking about the artist and working with the artist and how and I started Googling the people that were on the call. I wanted to know who I was on the call with. And they were city administrators, they were council members, they were arts members, they were, I think I was the only chamber person that I found, but we have a lot of communities that are investing in this program. And the chamber, $450,000 budget is going to try to do $1,000 to get one here. The Arts Council that's got $25,000 $2,500 in the bank is going to try to do $1,000 to get one here. And then we need to find another $1,000. We need to be investing about 10 grand a year in this thing. And we need to start putting sculptures. And these are some cool sculptures. And we share them. So we keep them for 2 years. And then we either can buy them. How many people said to the cities, go, oh, our community just loves them. We're trying to figure out a way to buy a $7,000 sculpture to leave it here permanently. Guys, these are the love notes that your community deserves to have from its city. And I'm not here to pressure, I'm just here to say that, man, it was really, really cool because you would see pictures of those sculptures in those cities or in those parks. I mean, you think about what we should have sculptures sitting over at Rotary Park. We should have some over at Gardens of Woodfield and McCauley and maybe one of the chamber office and City Hall and downtown. And maybe we could get businesses to get involved with it possibly. But this is something you guys really, really, truly owe to our community to say, hey, we need to commit to this. And here's how it works. It's $1,000 a year. It's $2,000 every 2 years. And then you literally go to a draft style. We have a job as a council members on the Arts Council to narrow down our top picks that we want to bring into our community. And then we go to literally like the NFL draft. We'll get a draft number, and then we've got to go through and pick, and we'll see what we end up with. And there's some really amazing stuff. And every year, there's a new cycle of new sculptures that come back into rotation. And so it's a really neat process. And so for $10,000 a year, we could be earmarking some dollars towards bringing some love notes to our community that we could have art and sculptures in Nixa. We have none. We have absolutely zero. We have 3 paintings on some walls, a big owl. We have just a few little pieces of artwork in town. Guys, this town deserves to have some extra help. So I'm going to challenge you guys to really consider this in the future. I wouldn't say it's too late this year, but I think we've committed to trying to do 3. I don't know. We just need to get through this first year, don't you think, council member?
It'd be nice if we could get 3 sculptures this year, but I would really love to see, I agree with everything that Chris is saying about it. This town does need sculptures. And it's this program is such a great opportunity because you can have a sculpture for 2 years and then switch it out for a different one.
Or you could have the opportunity to buy it if we wanted to.
Or, as he said, if you love it, you can buy it, but if you don't, you get a new one. So if we could have, just say, 10 concrete pads in different places around the city, and, 1 year we get 5 new sculptures, the next year we get 5 more new sculptures, and they would just keep rotating. Or if there's one or more that we really love, we'd buy it and it would just become a
There was
permanent
one
fixture.
that's already in another community. It was basically X marks the spot. And it's a red and gray X that was in Decatur, Missouri, I think. So I heard them say something about it, but it's already taken. But there's things like that we may come across down the road that we really like. So we're going to be going after this, but I'm going to keep coming back to you guys and challenge you. $10,000 to bring artwork and some love notes at this capacity to our town. You know you can afford that. So that's my note on that. Okay. And then also the big news, we are currently under contract. This is another big project that I'm working on for our community. And boy, did I bite off a lot going into our spring season with Nixpo and Sucker Days and fireworks shows. But you know what? I'm committed to this because I believe it's really, truly going to be something great for our town. Plus, it puts us over here really close. This building is at 902 West Mount Vernon. I think I can hit a driver from here. Maybe not quite a driver, Jared. Driver 9-iron, maybe. I think I could maybe get close. But it's just right up the road up here, guys. It's going to put us right here on Highway 14. This is a major, major, major project for our chamber. 3,700 square foot building. We're going to call it the Nixa Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center. We want to really, truly, truly do something unique with this and fix this up. We're looking at about a $150,000 remodel. It's stretching our chamber it's stretching us, but it's also, I'm a be-do-have guy. We're going to be the chamber that the Nixa community deserves, and then we will do the activities that we need to make that happen, and we'll have the success that our chamber or our community expects. And it's just going to be kind of fun. We're going to have about a 950 square foot meeting room in the basement. It does have an outside entrance. We cannot make this thing fully ADA accessible, but we're working on it. We're redesigning some bathrooms. Met with Garrett the other day and Mr. Ripple from the Planning and Zoning Department. We think that there's only a handful of things we can do to stay within budget, but we want to make it more ADA accessible. And bringing those guys over and talking to them and getting their input so that we can hopefully get this to go through this permit process easily, because we have to make the big decision. We close in February the 15th. Everything's on track to move forward. We know it's a used building. We know we have some paint and cosmetics, but can you just imagine a standalone building with that little unique character to it that we can call the visitor center? Maybe down the road, as we get those placemaker signs on Highway 160, we can say, hey, visitor center this way for Nixa Visitor Center, and that would be another neat aspect that we can bring. So that's going to be an exciting thing. The long-term plans, and this will just take us getting creative on finding investors or funding or some way of really truly fostering new businesses in Nixa, is that we still continue to need a true 2,000 to 2,500 square foot professional facilities for a meeting room space. That lot extends, and I didn't put any more pictures in it, but that lot extends way back in the back, and right behind the building is room for about a 2,500 square foot standalone building that would attach in some fireproof way, right, Garrett? We'd make sure there's separation so we don't have to have sprinklers in the other one. Okay, so we've been studying on that and how we can bring that in. And then we would look at what we can do to make the rest of the basement back into an incubator. So that would take some long-term investments, some funding. I don't know, but we really, truly do need that. And if we could figure out a way to help foster new businesses through an incubator model and then have an additional space on the back. So that is our big chamber news, in addition to everything else we're doing. I'm excited. It's a lot of elbow grease for me coming up this spring, but I'm willing to do the hard work. We're using local contractors as best we possibly can, and we'll keep that money right here in Nixa. But that's about all I have for you on a chamber update. Anybody have any questions for me or anything about our community or Nixa Chamber that I can answer tonight?
Any questions?
How many spots have you identified for the traveling art or sculptures?
Well, right now, that's something that's ongoing. And by the way, Katie's working with us through the Nixa Parks Department. She serves on the council as well. So we definitely know they need to be probably in the very highest public spaces. I would love to consider maybe putting one, since the chamber's $1,000, maybe outside in front of our office. We could look at any of the parks set up well for this. I mean, they really, truly do. I mean, Gardens of Woodfield. Matt, if you were to compare, Woodfield's not getting near the traffic McCauley and Rotary get. Would you agree with that? I mean, I just don't. You drive by Woodfield more than anybody. I mean,
A lot of people out there.
A lot of people. So
Sometimes.
that would absolutely be a great place. Could you imagine like a little walking, sculpture tour over there at some point? So there's that. I mean, really, I think the sky's the limit on opportunities. If you did partner with businesses, there are some chances that we could identify, a business to have a cool sculpture that, if you can find the right one, Amy, as I was going through those sculptures, I'm like, which one would people take selfies with? That's, I'm like, that. But then sometimes it's just that little accent piece that's sitting on a sidewalk in downtown Nixa. It doesn't have to be a true selfie type position. It just needs to be something that people go, oh, yeah, a little culture here. I like it. So, we have unlimited spaces. Right now we have it. In the art world, we have an open canvas.
Have you seen the big one downtown Springfield, the gigantic foot?
It's been a while. No, I have not.
It's a huge foot.
Yeah. And they're not they're doing their own program similar to this. This is partnering with 24 other communities in town. But they're not involved with this because I think they do something on their own with artists and they bring them in every few years. And the cool thing is that all we got to do is if we get something really big, we create the pad and then maybe have some helpers come over one day to unload it. And most of the artists will help install them and they hand deliver them at no cost. And so we just got to prepare the locations for them.
Has there been any issues with vandalism?
Nobody really said that on the call. I remember.
No, not vandalism.
No.
But the artists are also responsible for repairing any issues that would arise, too. So it's a pretty awesome program.
There are some that I identified that would definitely become climbing gyms that we may not want to look at. I think that, especially in a very, like a location like a park, could you take some of those and put them in front of a chamber office? Yeah, possibly, or maybe in a downtown Nixa setting. But we'll have to identify those that go in the park because I could see them becoming jungle gyms.
Is there insurance or anything that we'd have to buy to go along with that?
We're part of a program that covers that. We had to pay in some things, but in the end, yeah, if their vandalism happens, I think there's not a whole lot you can cover on that. So, but it's part of the whole overall program. We paid the $50 to be a part of it, and I think that helps cover some of it. But nobody said anything on the call about vandalism. I'm sure it can happen, of course, but I remember one of them was in a flood, and they were talking about it was in one of the floods in a downtown, it may have been St. Charles. and down there on their Riverwalk, and it had flooded, and she said that it just cleaned up just fine. That was the only thing that we heard on the call about damage. It's a big deal, guys. It's kind of cool. We're not doing anything else. I mean, we do some fun events and cool parades and got a great parks department, and our parks are looking better and better all the time, but I think we need to do some additional accent pieces, and this is a very low-cost way of doing it. Any other questions? Okay.
We're good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. You guys know how to get a hold of me, and keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Thanks.
All right, for our next presentation, when we get to the ordinance section, our first ordinance is going to be establishing a new rate structure for our electric utility. So I invited my good friend, Mr. Sam Hamra, to come and speak to us a little bit on the history of Nixa Electric. He was our city attorney in the 1960s when our electric cooperative was created. And I know many of us heard this story before, but it's always good to hear again, and I'm sure there's some people that haven't, and get it recorded down again. Sam just had his 90th birthday as well, so happy birthday, Sam. Happy birthday. And so we'll give the floor over to Mr. Hamra to give us a lesson on the history of Nixa Electric.
When you used to be 90, you move a little slower.
That's fine. We accept that.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian Steele, City Council, staff members, thank one and all for giving me the privilege of speaking here today. I do want to introduce my guests here this evening. My wife, June. Where's June? Will you stand, June, so everybody can see? Some of you may have seen June on the Ozark Jubilee. She sang with the Jubilaires on national television. And my two neighbors, Anna Baker and Micah Baker. Anna's a senior star softball pitcher at Glendale, and Micah is a star golfer, freshman. Let's give them a big hand, please. And my two special guests is Greg Mcmanus and his lovely wife, Judy. Some of you have met Greg, but Greg was a hero. He had survived five helicopter crashes in Vietnam, where he was a pilot, and was highly decorated, and God bless him. He's here and does a great job with the Barons, where he leads former retirees, and his lovely wife, Judy. Let's give them a big hand. God bless them. Let me ask you, how many of you have heard me give this talk on Nixa Electrical Distribution System? I gave it at the 50th anniversary. How many of you heard it? 1, 2, 3, 4.
You people have it.
Okay. The mayor wanted me to tell this story tonight because he thought it would have an effect on those of you who haven't heard it, on how we got to where we are. Interesting story. How many of you remember Kirk Hawkins and L.D. McCoskey? Raise your hand. They own the
Three
Nixa
of us.
hardware. Well, this is very interesting. And the mayor wanted me to go ahead and tell the story. And if I'm boring you to death, raise your hand and I'll stop talking.
Don't do that.
The building of the Nixa electrical distribution system began soon after I began practicing law in a law firm in Springfield, Missouri in 1959. A senior law partner handed me a letter from two retail seed dealers in Kentucky who said they had a claim against Nixa Hardware Company, which was owned by Kirk Hawkins and L.D. McCoskey. They felt Nixa Hardware Company would not deliver the seed at the price they ordered, because the price had risen from the time of their telephone call to the time that the seed was supposed to be shipped. The Kentucky retailers had to go out on the open market and buy seed at a higher level price. They were making a claim for about $1,800. The senior partner told me that I was the number 10 man. I was the low man on the totem pole in the firm. He said none of the other lawyers wanted to handle it because it was a contingency fee case. But I was a hungry lawyer, and so I said I would take the case, and so I sent a demand letter to Kirk Hawkins and L.D. McCroskey. After receiving no response to my demand letter, I proceeded to file my lawsuit against Nixa Hardware Company for the $1,800 plus interest, attorney fees, and court costs. After several months of exchanging pleadings, the case was tried on a change of venue by jury trial in Galena, Stone County, Missouri, in the early 1960s. The jury awarded the judgment to my clients, which by then the judgment with interest, attorney fees, and court costs was around $2,700. My clients were happy, and I was overjoyed. After owning my own law office on Plaza South in Springfield in 1965, Kirk Hawkins called me and wanted to come see me. During his visit with me, he stated that I should not have won the Nixa Hardware case, and I told him I agreed with him. He went on to explain that Empire District Electric Company had been serving the city of Nixa with electric power and that their franchise had expired. The city of Nixa did not want to renew the franchise. Instead, Nixa wanted to build their own electrical distribution system. Kirk said that the city of Nixa was looking for a new city manager, a new city attorney to represent them on a part-time basis. And he wanted to know if I would serve as part-time Nixa city attorney. I told him I'd be delighted, because in truth of fact, I was a hungry lawyer practicing on my own. So naturally, I was not going to turn that down, which I really knew nothing about city attorney business or electrical distribution system. So who was I to advocate that I was an expert, and I wasn't. How little did I know when I took that case what a challenge that was going to be. After much litigation and hard feelings expressed in many ways by both sides, the courts ruled in our favor and allowed the city of Nixa the right not to renew the franchise agreement so that Nixa could build their own electrical distribution system. Along with Mayor Kirk Hawkins during those 4 years, the city council consisted of Finest Gold, Paul Moore, Melvin Martin, L.I. White, Frank White, Roy Middleton, Clarence Middleton, Bill Gardner, Leonard Martin, Juan Jernigan was city clerk, Cliff Schaefer was deputy city clerk. After going to the voters twice, the city received strong public support for approval of issuing bonds in the amount of $265,000. And we began building the Nixa electrical distribution system with Line Builders, Inc. of Wichita, Kansas, as our contractor. People began seeing 2 sets of poles throughout the city of Nixa. One set was being installed by Empire District Electric, and one set next to them installed by the city of Nixa. During the court hearings, Kirk Hawkins had a heart attack, and this, so you may remember, and later died. We had a verbal assurance from Empire District Electric that until the Nixa system was built, Empire District Electric would go ahead and supply electric power for the city of Nixa. After the Nixa electrical distribution system would be built, Empire would continue supplying Nixa wholesale electrical power. This way we could operate our city-owned electrical distribution system. Unfortunately, while the system was being built, Empire told the city that they would not supply wholesale power to Nixa after the Nixa electrical distribution system was built. That meant that we had to go find a wholesale supplier. Southwest Power Administration, SPA, agreed to supply us the wholesale power, but we had to build our own transmission power line from the SPA line in the Springfield area to the Nixa electrical distribution system. As a result, we then formed Progressive Industries Company, which was made up of investors from people in Nixa, including Cliff Schaefer, who became our company president and general manager, along with other investor stockholders. We found a contractor who was willing to build a transmission power line, but it was going to take a lot more money than the $40,000 investors were going to invest in Progressive Industries. We went to Archie Yates, How many of you remember Archie Yates? Any of you remember? He was a banker. He was president of the Nixa Bank. And we asked him for a loan through SBA. We all flew to Kansas City on Ozark Airlines, get approval for a $135,000 SBA loan. I want you to know that was the first plane trip that Archie Yates ever took, and he was scared to death. And I don't know if you remember Archie, you know what that means. Now we had the financing in hand, the business corporation established, and a signed agreement with the contractor, S&S Line Construction Company of Kansas City, for $132,000 to build a transmission line from Springfield to Nixa. Once construction began on the transmission system, Empire District Electric, along with Union Electric, Kansas City Power and Electric, Kansas Power and Electric, went to the Public Service Commission and sought to enjoin Nixa from building this transmission power line. After PSC issued a temporary restraining order against Progressive Industries, we had a big hearing in Jeff City. And do any of you remember our delegation going for that hearing? Did you all raise your hand? So we walked into the PSC, and you'll be interested in this. All these utility companies were there in their gray flannel suits and ties, and their attorneys also. My people from Nixa walked in with overalls on. And you can imagine what kind of impression we made. So after the Public Service Commission then issued a temporary restraining order against Progressive Industries. We had a big hearing in Jeff City. At that hearing, the Public Service Commission issued a permanent restraining order against Progressive Industries. Now we were in a jam, and I was sweating blood. We did not have the Nixa electrical district system built, and we had no revenue to pay the bonds. We had a contractor who had built part of the transmission power line, but could not get paid because we could not use the SBA funds to pay him. Here I was trying to figure a way out of this dilemma, and I was truly sweating blood. One day I received a call from an attorney in Thayer, Missouri, who identified himself as Hubert Davidson. Hubert told me he knew we were in trouble, and I told him, you bet I was. But he said he would come to Springfield to meet with me, which he did. He said he knew Doug Wright, who was the director of Southwest Power Association in Tulsa, and his staff. They would come to his farm in Thayer to hunt quail each year. He got us an appointment, and Hubert and I drove to Tulsa to meet with Doug Wright and his staff. I will never forget walking into Doug Wright's office. Here was this distinguished gray-haired man with a handlebar mustache. He looked like General Bull Moose and Little Abner. There was a long T-shaped table at which he and 8 men were sitting, 4 on each side. Doug Wright started out by asking Hubert how the quail hunting was going to be this fall. Hubert told him the quail hunting was going to be great. At that moment, I felt that we were in friendly territory. Doug Wright said he didn't like it that this little guy was being picked on by these big guys, and he was aware that Kirk Hawkins had had a heart attack during one of our trials and later died, and he was going to try to help us out. He went around the room and asked each man about all the different components. He had 8 men, 4 on each side. He asked each man all the different components needed for an electrical distribution system, such as a transformer, a switchgear, a power bus, switches, cable, chain link fence, and several other components, until he had a commitment from each of them to deliver all the needed components. He said he was going to set this up under a Ham-Hube code name, and he set a date when all these parts would be delivered to the site in Nixa so that SBA could start construction of the Nixa electrical distribution system. Now remember that Doug Wright had been appointed as the first director of SBA by Franklin D. Roosevelt and reappointed by President Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Lyndon Johnson until being terminated by President Nixon. I could have gone over and hugged his neck after that, but I felt it was improper under the circumstances. Sure enough, on the set day, I got a call from Finest Gold. He told me that I needed to come down to see what was happening. I never saw anything like it. There were several SBA trucks out there on Highway 14 west of Highway 160. SBA men were working, photographers were there taking pictures, and the media was there. All the other utility companies were there, and they were very upset. Naturally, it upset them when they looked at me and I was smiling. Later, I received word from Finest Gold, and Empire District Electric, and the other Missouri utility companies were going with their lawyers to Washington, D.C. to try to get President Lyndon Johnson to order the U.S. Attorney General to stop the construction of the Nixa electrical distribution system. Prior to this, I'd become good friends with Missouri U.S. Senator Stuart Simonton. He had been appointed by President Roosevelt as the first U.S. Secretary of the Air Force. I helped him on his Missouri U.S. Senate election in 1952, 58, 64, and served as his finance chairman and campaign chairman in South Missouri in 1970. He was the godfather of my younger daughter, Jackie. And at some point, I'd like for you to start passing the book of Senator Simonton and the picture of Senator Simonton, so you'll see who he was if those of you don't remember. And the picture there is with him in the baptism of Jackie when he was the godfather. I called Senator Simonton in Washington and told him what was taking place. I said, Senator, I'm not going to ask you to take my side on this. All I'm asking you to do is to stay neutral. He promised me that he would. In those days, you could call a U.S. Senator and talk to him directly, which you can't do today. Senator Simonton retired from the U.S. Senate in 1977, when many accolades were given to him for his outstanding services to our country. That was a key turning point. Several months later, I was told by Bob Hawkins, the attorney for one of the utility companies that attended the U.S.-D.C. meeting, that all the attorneys and CEOs for the Missouri utility companies met with Secretary of the Interior and with Missouri U.S. Senator Ed Long and U.S. Senator Stuart Simonton. They then met with President Lyndon Johnson at the White House. When the president asked if they had the support of both Missouri U.S. senators, they said they had Senator Ed Long's support, but Senator Simonton was remaining neutral. The president then told them that unless they had the support of both U.S. senators from Missouri, he would not order the U.S. Attorney General to stop the construction of the Nixa electrical distribution system. Senator Simonton honored his word. And as I said, see the book and picture. That book is on my desk in my office. Hold that up, just if you will. And I tapped that book several times a day because he saved, not only did he save the Nixa electrical distribution system, but he saved my legal career. Without him, I would never be practicing law today. The Nixa electrical distribution system was built and became operational on or about December 1, 1968. As of July 31, 1969, it was supplying electrical power to 345 Nixa households. It was not necessary to complete the building of the power transmission line, since SBA had their own power line to deliver wholesale power to the electrical distribution system, which they did. We were now in business. We set a board of public works, wherein we patterned it after the Springfield City Utilities Board, with several board members appointed by Mayor Karkakis before he died. They included Keith Young, Ralph Seiler, Kyle Keltner, and Dr. R.F. Wilson. They did a good job as board members for the utility company for several years. Then the city took over the direct operation of the Nixa electrical distribution system. The money the city made from the electrical distribution system, instead of electric supplying the electrical power, helped the Nixa community grow dramatically. The city of Nixa grew from about 800 people when I first became city attorney in 1965 to over 23,000 people today. If you ask anyone in Nixa who knows about the Nixa economic growth, they will tell you that one of the main reasons for the growth of Nixa was that Nixa was owning their own electrical distribution system. I was proud to have played a role in it. There are many people that deserve credit in helping us get the electrical distribution system for the city of Nixa built. This would not have been accomplished without all of them participating. They were truly the heroes of Nixa. Now, I felt that we should celebrate. So you'll get a kick out of this. So I invited all the city councilmen of Nixa down to my cabin on Table Rock Lake, which was across from Cape Fair Boat Dock, for an afternoon of socializing and cookout. This was in March of 1969. I decided that since it was a sunny March day, I would take everyone for a ride in my used 18-foot Mark Twain boat. So they all, I shouldn't say this, got their refreshments, piled into the back of my boat, and I was driving. We were laughing and having a good time. There was nobody on the lake because it was cold. This was before Johnny Morris in 1972. Now remember, this was 69. Nobody was on the lake. We all had jackets on, and I was going full speed. The sun was in my eyes, and I was turning around talking to the Nixa people, when suddenly I looked up and saw this aluminum flat-bottom fishing boat. I do not know how I did not see it before. It was perpendicular to my boat, and I was headed right for the center of it. There was a tall farmer in overalls and a hat standing in the center of the boat, fishing and facing me. On his right was a very heavy-set farmer in overalls, also fishing. I pulled the throttle back, but not in time, and I plowed right in the center of that boat. So help me. I immediately put the throttle in reverse, backed the boat up, turned the key off, took off my shoes and pants, and jumped in to try to save the fat guy who had jumped into the water. He saw me coming and yelled at me, "Get away from me, you crazy guy." Although in more vulgar terms, as he was trying to hang over the back of the boat. After that, I swam back to my boat, and I told the Nixa guys, who were in shock and wet because they had all fallen down in the boat. And I said, "Please get my attorney card out of my billfold," which they did. I swam over and gave it to the tall fisherman who was wet and was starting to stand up. And I apologized to him. Even though I damaged his boat considerably, it didn't sink. I said to him, "Look, here's my name and phone number. I apologize that this has happened. Get your boat fixed, or whatever needs to be done, or replaced, and I will buy you a new boat. Just come to my office and I will give you a check." He just mumbled, but did not say what I'm sure he really felt. As I started swimming back to my boat, the tall guy that was fishing was still holding the fishing pole. He turned around to his big, fat friend who was still struggling in the water and said, "Claude, this just ain't been our day." You can imagine if they'd been fishing all day and probably had not caught any fish, and then this crazy guy rams into the only other boat on the lake. I mean, no other boat on the lake but these two boats. As we were driving back to my place, the people from Nixa were still in shock from what had happened. We returned to my place, we could dry our clothes. The more we talked about it, the more humorous the story became. So it became the standard joke in Nixa for several weeks. Someone who was on the street in Nixa would see another buddy across the street and say, "Claude, this ain't been our day." And both of them would start laughing. A few weeks later, the tall fisherman came to my office with a bill for repairs to his boat, and I gave him a check. I asked him how Claude was doing. He said, "I don't know. Claude ain't been fishing since you ran into my boat." A few months later, Bob Hawkins, the attorney from Jeff City, came to see me. He would later become the president of the Missouri Bar Association, and he was an excellent lawyer for Empire District Electric. He told me all that had happened in Washington, D.C., and he said, "Sam, I want to give you some advice. You got by with this one, but don't you ever try again to do this. And I said to him, Bob, there's not enough money in the world for me to try to do this again. I appreciate all of you being here today to hear the history of the building of the Nixa electrical distribution system over 50 years ago. I'll always be indebted to Kirk Hawkins, the mayor and the city council for hiring me, the investors in Progressive Industries, the members of the Board of Public Works, Hubert Davidson, Doug Wright, and U.S. Senator Stuart Simonton, and others who helped me. It was a great experience. I was honored to be the Nixa city attorney from 1965 to 1970, and I am pleased that Mayor Brian Steele invited me to speak at the city council meeting tonight. I thank each of you, your fathers and grandfathers, the people of Nixa, and others who stood by me. I will always have fond memories of each of them and you and the people of the city of Nixa. Thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. You have no idea how much this means to me, what you just did. And as I said, I'm 90, but I can tell you that when people ask me, I tell them I'm from Springfield, Missouri, but Nixa, Missouri is my second home. And I really feel that way. And I want you to know that if there's anything that I can ever do to help the city of Nixa, I want to be there. I want to be there to help you. And God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for the great job each of you are doing to build Nixa the way you've done. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Anybody have any questions? I'll be glad to answer any questions.
That was
I've heard that story a few times over the years, and I think it gets better every time you tell it, Sam.
What did you say, Brian?
I said I've heard that story a few times over the years, and it gets better every time you tell it.
I try to breeze it up a little bit. And I enjoy telling it. And you'd be surprised how many times I've told that story to people, and they get as big a kick out of it as I do. And believe me, when I say how much this meant to me in my career, and I could not be more grateful than I have been to all of you people that helped me along the way, and you did, and God bless you. You want to pass that book and that picture up to the city council members, let them look at it before I take it back home. That's the picture of Senator Stuart Simonton. And so you'll know that I take that book, it's on my desk, and I pat it several times a day. And Senator Simonton has two sons, Tim Simonton, who is an attorney in D.C., and Jim Simonton, former congressman, and he's in D.C. And I talk to them about once a month, talk to them, and I will send them pictures of this tonight and tell them, and they know full well how much I appreciate what his dad did to stand by me. Now just think of this. Think of this. If I hadn't have asked him, would he stay neutral? And then President Johnson went to Secretary of the Interior, and then they said that they asked Senator Long, who said he was supportive of the Attorney General intervening and stop the building. And when he said that he went to Senator Stuart Simonton, and Senator Simonton said, I'm staying neutral. That's all it took for Lyndon Johnson to say, I will not order the Attorney General to stop the building of the next electrical distribution system. So in your prayers, when you go to bed, after hearing the story, thank the soul of U.S. Senator Stuart Simonton. He literally saved Nixa. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Why don't we take, before Doug gives us a presentation on the future of Nixa Electric, we will take a 5-minute recess, and maybe council can get a picture with Mr. Hamra before you all head out. So we'll be adjourned for 5 minutes. We'll bring the meeting back to order. Oh, ordinances, please. First reading.
Thank you.
Sorry.
First reading, Council Bill Number
just staring at Doug.
2022-012, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending Chapter 22, Article 4, Section 22-310 of the Nixa City Code to establish new rates for electric service.
There we go. Mayor and council, this bill proposes rate adjustments for Nixa Electric Service by implementing a small rate reduction in the first year, or for this year. It also aligns demand charges with true cost and use by the different customer classes, and implements small 1.5% increases in future years through 2026. Also included in the rate adjustments is a removal of the fuel adjustment charge that we have now that is actually a pass-through from an old CU contract, and replacing it with a more applicable energy cost adjustment, which would provide a buffer for our market cost that is outside the base energy. Rates have remained steady since 2017. Over the last few years, we've made considerable changes to how we purchase and receive wholesale energy, which prompted us to complete a new cost of service study that was presented to you last October. That study determined that a one-time downward rate adjustment was warranted to put us in line with new wholesale rates, somewhat like a reset. It further determined that once adjusted correctly, small increment rate increases could be made to keep up with the rising cost as we move forward in doing business. Holding rates since 2017 has been done partially by spending down some excess reserves, and also supported by the sale of our transmission assets in 2018. I'm not really paraphrasing these, but I've got some bullet points on these slides that kind of go in along with what I've talked about, which is very close to what you have in your packet. By selling the transmission assets, we were able to pay off all remaining debt, thus eliminating an annual bond and interest payment of $715,000. The sale also eliminated roughly $100,000 in annual upkeep expenses and allowed us to avert a $2 million capital upgrade, which the buyer had completed, which is the 69 line that you see out here. Other actions afforded by the asset sale went towards the early exit of a high-priced, long-term energy supply contract and enter into a more favorable contract for the delivery of wholesale power. Finally, we were able to get through the cost of Winter Storm Uri without taking on more debt, as a number of our sister cities did. So even though we were able to have a considerable increase in our reserves through that period because of the sale, we also spent some of that down. We spent some down to get out of the contract early. Winter Storm Uri hit, so we've spent some of that down. Other considerations for new rate structure include the development of a true Nixa wholesale energy cost adjustment I mentioned earlier, which buffers wholesale changes in energy market prices each year. This ECA, for an abbreviation, that's what we need is another acronym, right? Would be basically zero, or a non-adjustment in the first year. And what we would do from there is, in future years, we would compare back against our predicted wholesale cost or estimated wholesale cost to determine if we needed to collect additional revenues to make up for the change. Over the past year, we've seen considerable, or one of the other things that I wanted to bring to your attention is, over the past year, we've seen considerable increases for many of the materials and services. We've talked about this through the budget and several other things this year. Along with that, we've had higher than anticipated costs for capital projects. Some of those have come in higher, as you've seen as we go through the budget process, if we've carried some of those over because they were under budget in the beginning. And then the other thing that has hit electric more recently is moving electricity, moving lines for road projects, which, because we've got those in the state right-of-way, it's our cost to move those when a road project comes along. So we've added some considerable expense lately. And so what started out back in the early teens as an idea to do some small increases and then not do any for a little bit in an effort to bring the reserves down was very successful in doing that, and we're kind of at the end of that now. I'm going to apologize for this. I knew this was going to happen. It's going to be small, and I don't know that you'll really be able to read it, but what this is, in that very first column, is basically what it's doing is showing you today's rate. It's the service rate along with, we've got a tiered energy rate for the residential. Well, we have tiered basically for all of them. And it's comparing it to what the proposed rate would be, and also giving you an example of the percentages. In the residential side, an average decrease that's being proposed with this particular rate would be anywhere between 1 and 2.8 to 3%. It gets a little higher in the commercial, and then goes even a little higher in the larger commercial and in the industrials. That's due mainly to the change in how we're attributing the demand charge. Previously, our demand charge, we had 3 different demand charges, which really doesn't make any sense because our demand charge is a flat demand charge per kW, and so I don't know why we're charging different demands for the different classes. So by changing those and leveling those out and allocating them, per use, that's what changes, and that's what'll make some of the difference in the percentages you're seeing on the industrial, large commercial, and commercial sides. Now, just to try to make it a little bit simpler, this is a slide that has just the rates that you would see in the ordinance. So it doesn't show the stuff that's in 21 since 2017. The other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to on this one is the bottom line, which is the private security lighting. We're currently charging $8.70 for those. We can't maintain those private security lights for even close that. In calling around to get prices for what different utilities were charging, I also checked on private security lighting. The cheapest one I found was $15.75, and it went to $18. So what I'm proposing here is a 72% increase from $8.70 to $15. But we've left those so low for so long that we really are playing catch up with those. And then along with that, what I've shown is that same 1.5% increase, or close to it. I've rounded those to even numbers to get you to those. This slide, which is also, it's a little larger in your packet, will show you estimated revenue, expense, and unrestricted reserve balance. Now, what I've done is base these on that estimated revenue for the 2023 year, or the 2022 year, showing this new reduced rate, and then the 1.5% for each of those. I've had to make some estimates on expenses. It's easier to make a little estimate on expense on actually the wholesale power, because we've got some decent contracts there, and so it's a little closer on those. But some of the other items like wire and transformers, we've seen increases up to 40%. And so, though I didn't throw 40% in there, they've got several percent more than some of them do. I've had to do that in those lines just to try to be safe. By doing that, though, what we're seeing here is even with the 1.5% increase, 23 through 26, we're seeing a declining unrestricted cash balance. So what staff plans to do, if council moves forward with this rate, obviously we always do this anyway, but we'll be extra diligent in watching how close or how far off my estimates were to see where these cash balances land. So if we have to turn around and come back in 24 and say, hey, we've had some change here, we need to make some adjustments, we can look at this. So it's not like we're locked into this. You certainly have the availability to change that in the future if you want to. This slide represents the definition of what would be the new energy cost adjustment. Basically, we would begin that in 2023, and all kilowatt hours sold would be subject to an ECA to capture increased wholesale energy cost or share savings from reduced energy cost. The ECA would be calculated for each month for January, beginning in January, or the prior of the calendar year, and then any difference would be positive or negative, and we would apply it. So it's a very simple A minus B equals ECA. So it's the anticipated wholesale power cost. What we will use, or what we are using, is the actual wholesale power cost January through December of '21, and that wholesale power cost delivered to Nixa is 5.73 cents. So anything over and above that, or we will calculate B, and then that will tell us what we would use after 2023 if we have, or 2022 if we have an adjustment for 2023. So let me take that a step farther and try to give you an example to make it a little simpler. Customer's bill that uses 1,000 kW for use in a month in 2023, based on the adopted rate for 2023, an adjusted bill or an unadjusted bill would be $121.75. That's if there were a flat ECA. If there were, so say during that previous year, we actually ended up spending 0.23 of a cent more, so our average cost of power was 5.96 cents. The customer's bill for that same 1,000 kilowatts would wind up being $124.05 versus $121.75. Alternatively, the negative side, I gave you an example there that shows if it came in under at like 5.54 cents, the bill would be reduced to $119.85. That negative ECA is what you've been seeing on your bill for a good 6 years now, maybe 7 years. And that number that you're seeing ranges anywhere from 12 to 14%. So it's a considerable amount of reduction. And so that's part of the reason that during the discussion of the cost of service study, there was a discussion about being able to reduce revenue 15.5%. Actual rates, once you get to the rates, you have to reduce the rates to make up for the difference in that negative FCA, and therefore you're already realizing a 12 to 14% rate increase right there. So by making this adjustment, it's considerably smaller to get to the same 15.5% revenue reduction. One of the things that you had also asked me back in October would be for a comparison of how these rates would compare with our surrounding utilities. We have 4 surrounding utilities, 3 that actually touch us, and then of course Springfield, which is just north of us. Springfield's obviously the least expensive at 10.19 cents. Now I based all of this on a 1,000 kW residential home. White River Valley is at 10.29 cents. And the proposed rate that I have shown you is a flat 12 cents. Ozark Electric Co-op comes in at 12.45. The current rate in Nixa today, exclusive of that FCA credit that we're providing, is 13.78 cents. And Liberty Utilities at 13.84. I only found one of those that had a rate case in front of the PSC right now. And it was Liberty, of course. It seems like they always have at least one. Sometimes they've got as many as 4 in there at the same time. But they're trying to. Most of their rate increase that they've got right now is for some transmission stuff that they want to do. So they want to pay it ahead. They want to get paid ahead of time, is what they're trying to do. So from there, I'm going to stop, and because I don't know if I stayed in your 5 minutes or not, but I talked faster than what I had. Staff recommendation, of course, is to bring this back for second reading and adoption at your February 14th meeting. But until then, I'm certainly open for your questions, discussions you'd wish to have with me, and any direction you might have moving forward.
So I want to understand the rates. If you'll go back one slide to that rate sheet there. No,
That one?
That one right there. yeah.
Okay.
So currently, our rate is .1378, but we have an FCA credit each month that lowers that, you're saying 12 to 14%. So that actually makes that rate
Closer to the 12 cents
closer to the 12 cent.
that you're gonna,
Okay.
that you're seeing in the proposed.
Okay, so what you're asking is that we go ahead and eliminate that credit and just make a flat rate of 12 cents. And then each additional year, we're gonna increase it 1.5%. Is that what is that an easy summary of what
That's a
this-
very basic summary, yes, sir. And also the ECA. So say we had an increase in some of just the energy that we're exposed to the market, you know, it may run us up, like I said.
Right.
Point
right,
so many cents
Which we'll
or
get
something.
back into doing the ECA,
Right.
you know.
That'll gain
once
that
we
back.
cycle a year, we'll start doing the ECA
Right.
based off of how we purchase
And
it.
basically what that ECA does is it helps you ride those base rates longer because you're capturing the most flexible piece of your O&M expenses by extending that out.
So what concerns do you have with moving forward with this?
Well, obviously, the expenses we've been seeing, I mean, they're a concern of mine. And that was one of the reasons I said, we're gonna watch this really close, because, you know, though it appears that if we moved along, we could move along for several years and do pretty good with this, we've seen increases that are unbelievable. We've seen increases 40 to 45%. We used to buy, what did we buy a transformer at? We had this discussion here not too long ago. It was nearly double for just a residential 50 KVA transformer. You just passed the budget, the ink isn't even dry on the budget yet. We're over budget on wire already. And we'll be on transformers before the end of the month, and we'll be coming back to you sometime this year to get budget amendments. And those are just to get the materials to meet the subdivisions that are being constructed right now. So those things, if that doesn't ease, you know, fairly soon, it's gonna be a real concern. Now, if we do really good and fuel prices go down and we have some good, you know, some good market purchases, and we're able to really save some money on the energy, that's gonna buy us some time as well, so. But yes, I mean, anytime we move rates, it's a concern,
Sure.
so.
Do we have anything that shows the effect of what the next 5 years would be if we left it alone?
No, sir, I didn't put that together.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's all right.
I can tell you that we're spending more than we're bringing in now, especially with the capital projects we're doing. Because we've got, and when I say that, we've got internal capital projects we need to be doing for the system reliability and the growth of the system, but we're also seeing million-dollar line relocations for road projects that have nothing to do with making our system better, although we are making some improvements on that along the way. We wouldn't have probably done those projects had it not been for the road relocation. So,
And this reduces our total amount of revenue by adopting something like this?
yes, it will. Yeah, it will reduce revenue. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me, what
That's
that
okay.
number is. So, but there again, it's not the full, it's more like a 3 to 5%. It's not that full 15.5% because we've got to compensate for the FCA.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing is that we're talking about reducing rates, but the costs are still rising, so why would we want to reduce the rates? And that could be anybody on council or Doug or whoever wants to answer that question. I think the reason it's so out of balance this year is because we've had all of these extra expenses. We had the winter storm last winter, and we had the relocation, which throws it off. In the future years, once you get out into those, then it doesn't. I think there's something wrong with this chart. From the charts that you had given Jared and I before.
Okay.
The sales line on 2022 was 17.25, which would then reduce out, you would get some number closer to zero at the end, or a
You mean
small-
just the electric sales itself
Yeah,
and not the
all the
grand
sales
total?
seems to be $500,000 lower than the sheet you gave us before. So we might want to go back and check that.
I'm sorry.
The rates seem to be the same as this sheet that we talked
I didn't
about.
bring those with me and,
Yeah, we can look at it again later, but
okay.
yeah, I would say no to this too. But that's not what,
Yeah,
that's
well,
not what
I'm
we're.
saying. I'm looking at this, it looks like in 5 years, we'll be running
Yeah.
almost $1 million in the negative.
Yes, that is, that should not be the case. There's something's amiss somewhere. The number we had was like, I think we ended up with like 2 million pot to the positive at the end, which was still enough to buffer kind of everything.
I guess I just don't understand why we want to raise
Yeah, I
rates
think
and
it's
then
just-
start
that was
raising,
one of the other
increasing
Now,
again each year.
one of the scenarios we looked at, we used 2% increase each year instead of 1.5, and that will get you closer to that $2 million at the end of 2026.
I think it was the.
Maybe
it was
I used the wrong one.
Yeah, so to get to that number on the sheet you gave us before, it was a rate cut to 0.9937 instead of to 10.5.
So the 2022 budget, the electric sales line is 16,750.
That's what I did. I used that number for the sales.
That's what we've budgeted.
Everything else is all the other items of revenue that got me to the 17.
What number did you use to calculate that number, though? That's the problem. Yeah, we can look at it. I think
That's
Those
just
were
the
estimates
think
back
there's
in
about-
October.
across the entire thing, I think there's about a
Yeah,
$2
I mean,
million
there's-
discrepancy in the
Yeah.
numbers that we originally had for these rates and the numbers that are on this slide. So we would end up about even at the end, which is kind of where we wanted to be.
Yeah, I was
can
just,
readjust.
I meant, reading this and listening to it, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, why would we want to decrease rates to start increasing them next year?
So,
You know?
yeah, there's other things besides just electric sales in electric
Right.
revenue. So the total revenue for electric is budgeted at 17,178.2.
Yeah.
So there's other things, penalties and meter fees and things like that, so, but just the electric sales based on the rates is 16.
I think he maybe used the lower number when he calculated the ones for the budget spreadsheet, and we selected a slightly higher set of rates than the original proposed lower rates. If
I'm
that
sorry.
makes any
I didn't
sense at
bring
all.
my folder with me, so.
Yeah, we
I
can,
know, I didn't either.
we can go over and make sure that we correct that. We wouldn't have agreed to this either.
Okay, well, that's good to know that I'm not the only one.
No, yeah, I think,
Whatever we worked on.
yeah, we'll talk to Doug and Jennifer afterwards and make sure that we're all on the same page and then send out an update to this page that has the
Okay.
correct numbers. The rates are what we decided upon in our prior meeting, but just the totals that comes out to isn't coming out to the same as it came out to on these, so
Okay,
we'll discuss that.
okay. Any other questions? I'll get my sheets out.
So are we, like?
Well, this is
so
just
then
a
I-
first reading.
Yeah, it's the first reading, but if we adjust it and change it, can you still be able to do second reading next time, or no? Or we have to
Yeah,
do that
I think
before
so. We can do an interim of if this is the main issue you had, the 1.5% was just because that's what all the other utilities are on. They're on an incrementing 5-year basis, 1.5% every year for
Right.
5 years. So reducing the rates this year puts us in line so that at the end of this, we're kind of even. And then, like Doug was saying, if something drastic happens or prices continue to rise, we can make adjustments for that in the future.
Okay.
But like I said, we still have
It just,
Still got $8 million in the bank now, and so, like I said, I think
it sounds
returning
like-
some of
sounds like
that
we're gonna
back to
spend-
the
Sounds like we're
owners.
gonna spend that on the wire, though.
Yeah,
Well,
possibly.
as you can see, the revenue versus expense and capital, when you look at that line, there's
Man, we're already negative this
several
year.
$1 million worth of capital projects listed there.
Yeah.
That'll lead into that unrestricted pretty fast.
Yeah. All right, well, let's revisit that. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate your
Anything
help.
else? Okay.
I don't know if we're done or not, but I'm done. So I did right, minus 500,000 there.
Yep.
But I don't know how I got to 19 there.
I wish I had mine, because I
Yeah,
wrote all
I
mine.
don't know. A little more notes if I did. Any questions for Doug on that? Besides, figure out where the discrepancy was between the big negative number and the big positive number I had. We'll figure out what that discrepancy is. I will open the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time. And we will close the public hearing. Move on to first reading 2022-013.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2022-013, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with the Community Foundation of the Ozarks for the administration of a grant funding program and amending the 2022 budget to appropriate funds for such contract. Mayor and Council, in Jimmy's absence this evening, I'll just give you some background information on this. If you'll remember, back in 2021, council discussed using a portion of their ARPA funds for a grant program for nonprofits. Mr. Lyles spoke with the Nixa Community Foundation about them potentially administering this grant program since they have the processes in place. They agreed, they thought it was a good idea. We brought this to you and it was postponed because of the agreement needed to go through the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. And so they have reviewed it over and they've agreed to it. So this was delayed until this year. This is just a budget amendment moving the $40,000 from 2021 budget to 2022 budget. Staff recommends the approval of the ordinance, which would allow the city of Nixa to enter into the agreement with CFO and amend the budget for $40,000. Any questions on this?
Nope.
All right, we will open up the public hearing if you'd like to speak to this item. And we'll close the public hearing, move on to our second reading, Bill 2022-011.
Second reading, Council Bill Number 2022-11, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending Chapter 6 of the Nixa City Code by modifying Sections 6-4 and 6-5 so that violation of said sections apply to certain animals within the city limits regardless of where the animal is kept.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. You'll recall that we conducted first reading on this bill at January 10, 2022 meeting. And if approved, what this bill is attempting to do is modify the city's animal at large and animal rabies vaccination regulations so they apply when the animal is present in the city of Nixa, the city limits of the city of Nixa. Currently, there's a loophole in the code where it only applies to animals that are held in the city limits. So we've had situations where animals that are kept in an unincorporated Christian county may find their way into the city limits of the city of Nixa, and there's technically no ordinance violation for them running at large or being present in the city without a rabies vaccination. So the change at the heart of this bill would try to address that by changing the violation to the animals where it's kept to where it's present. Staff recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions? Thank you very
Thank you.
much. We will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this issue. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made?
Second.
Who seconded? Amy?
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrad,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orff.
Yes.
No. All right, we'll move on to our resolution section, Resolution 2022-014.
Resolution number 2022-014, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa consenting to the mayor's appointment of Matt Ogden and Tariq Lewis to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Late last year, we had a couple of planning and zoning commissioners submit their resignation. They had some changes in their personal life that precluded them from dedicating the amount of time that they wanted to the commission's work. So they resigned, leaving both of their terms vacant. Mayor Steele has appointed Mr. Matt Ogden to serve the remainder of what was David Young's term, which expires on November 1st, 2022, and Mr. Tariq Lewis appointed to serve the remainder of what was Ryan Keating's term, which is set to expire on November 1st, 2023.
Any questions? In the past, we'd had, the original Planning and Zoning Board, when I started, was almost all builders and developers for the most part, or tradesmen of some form. And over the last 10 years, we tried to really move away from that. We probably maybe swung the pendulum too far the other way now, and maybe we don't have that kind of expert knowledge. So Matt kind of brings, as a builder, he brings some of that expert knowledge back to the committee. And then Tariq ran for city council and has been interested in getting involved in other ways. So I think it's kind of a good way to feed him into learning the processes of the city and getting involved in that way as well. Agreed. All right. Take a motion to accept. Oh, no, does it say a public hearing? I guess it does. No, it doesn't. Does it not? Yeah, it does. It says right on there.
One of you saying no.
One of you saying no, one of you
yes.
saying yes. We'll open the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to these nominations. And we will close the public hearing. Take a motion to accept.
So made. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And move on to resolution 2022-015.
Resolution number 2022-015, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the city's personnel handbook by modifying policy 7.1.5, which relates to personal hours.
Yes, hello. It relates to the personal days, personal hours, I should say. It was brought to my attention that our personal hours in our handbook, they do not match. And so for our police department. And so I just need to make it change so it all matches and it's according to what everything else states. So our police department, of course, they work in 8 and 12-hour shifts. And so they earn time differently than the rest of the city. And so this just needs to match, like our holiday and vacation and things like that.
So will they be getting 8 hours for 8-hour employees and 12 hours for 12-hour employees?
They will be getting 10.
For both?
8 for 8-hour and 10 for 10 and or 12 hours.
Why would we not give them 12 hours?
We decided not to do that whenever we put the holiday leave in place, just because, or when they went to 12-hour shifts, basically, because they were working more hours, but they were also getting more time off. And so we decided to keep it at 10.
They're already only working 4 days that week anyway.
Yeah.
And then they get a day and a half off.
Right, but they also work 84 hours in their pay period and not 80.
That is true, but they also get 2 consecutive days off, and every other weekend they do get 3 days off. And so they work more hours, but they get more time off. And so when we looked at that, we decided to kind of cut it down the middle and kind of not give everything, but not cut it to 8 hours either.
The other thing too is if they decide to take a day off, then they have to use 2 hours from a different bank.
They do.
So they don't actually get their day off based off of a holiday or a personal day. They have to use vacation time or sick time or something else to take that full day off.
And that is true. Then we also, but the way we do that though is with our holiday pay. They get a holiday per month. Now granted it's 8 or 10 hours, but they do get 1 per month that they can use as they wish. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they do not. We did have a lot of payout this year, and so it's kind of a bonus. They get to use their holidays whenever they choose, and so they can use those 2 hours from that bank.
A lot of the shifts wouldn't even work. Some of the shifts wouldn't even work the holiday that it came up. So, where every one of the full-time staff would work Memorial Day if Memorial Day wasn't a holiday. Only, maybe a third of the officers have to work Memorial Day because only their shifts overlap that, they're something to that extent.
Right, but like if an officer works.
Yeah. And so
Memorial Day,
maybe you
he's
work
only
4th of
getting
July,
10
but you don't
hours.
work Memorial Day where Amanda would, if we didn't have the holidays, Amanda would have to work both those 2 days.
It is a fine line, and it is very tricky because to some it doesn't seem fair, but you need to look at the silver lining as well. And so, yes, you have the officers that do work 12 hours, and I understand that. Devil's advocate, if you want to put it that way. But you need to look at the silver lining. For myself and for like office staff, I don't pick my holidays. They fall when they fall. I take it when they fall. It's just the way it is. Whereas officers, they get to choose when they take their holidays. It's kind of a perk for them, and it is good. That way they can take their holidays. But whatever is not taken is paid to them at the end of the year. Whereas any other person, if my holiday falls last week and I'm sick. I don't get to really enjoy the holiday. I get the day off, but I don't get to enjoy the holiday, and nor do I get a payout at the end of the year. So, I mean, it's hard. It is hard, and I understand
It seems like there's been a lot of
that.
these changes within the police department's hours lately too. I mean, the last month we had one with their sick leave and their overtime and stuff like that, and there's concerns raised with that.
What about their sick leave? There wasn't really anything
Well,
with their
sick leave, personally, last month with the overtime, if they use a sick day, then they don't work, then they don't get a count overtime if they don't physically work the overtime.
That is true, but it was voted on.
I understand that. I'm just saying, there's been a lot of these changes lately.
It
It's like,
has.
why didn't we bring them all together at one time and kind of address them all
Well,
at once?
this was a mistake on my part, and I will admit that. It was overlooked whenever we made the 12-hour policies. It was overlooked on my part, and so it was brought to my attention, and so I need to correct that.
What do you think about it, Chief?
Well, at the risk of sounding contrary to the proposal tonight, I would tell you that what has happened since we've instituted 12-hour shifts is that we've created some situations where the way things are calculated are done differently, because in the past, we were looking at things as in days and not hours. And so whenever you do that, and you try to, if you say, the intention of the policy is to give you a day off, for example, and then if we don't, and now you're on 12s, and as the councilman pointed out, maybe 10 hours is enough to get you a day off. And so we're running into these issues where when we brought these 12 hours into our PD, when we're typically working 8s and 10s, it's creating scenarios where those things are calculated across many different types of benefits time. So it's not just overtime or sick time or vacation time, but personal time is everything in the policy has been calculated based on an 8-hour shift, sometimes modified to accommodate 10-hour shifts, and now we're on 12-hour shifts. And so we're finding these conflicts where people are being paid, an 8-hour employee is being paid 10 hours of personal holiday time. And 12-hour employees are being paid 10 hours of personal holiday time. So if you're an 8-hour employee, you get a 2-hour benefit. If you're a 12-hour employee, you get a 2-hour hit, so to speak. And so when we looked at all this, we were trying to be comprehensive in that, but we were finding that some policy changes did not get brought to you guys to make this all coincide.
Right.
And I think this is a good attempt to fix that, but I also think that as we look at this, we're going to find some other things that we need to figure out on that. And the only thing I would point out is that sometimes when we do incremental changes like this, the employees sometimes can become frustrated because they're seeing benefits times being moved and how it's calculated and how it's accrued. And, over a period of time, they're seeing many, many, many changes. And I felt like if we could just get them all together and bring them to you, that would be the best way to handle that. And at some point, somebody has to decide how is this going to be calculated and what do we want to give the personnel for the police. There's been a lot of talk about, well, you get the benefit of having your holidays differently than everybody else in the city. But I remind you, the reason that came about is because these people work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Everything in our city policy manual is really based on that 9 to 5, Monday through Friday employee. And a lot of times that's not, that doesn't coincide with the work that we're doing. When everybody else is asleep, we are working. And so we do have to have things that are different and take into those considerations. And so when you guys make these decisions about how people are going to be paid and what they're going to get, I know that certainly you want to be fair and consistent with city people, and it's not uncommon for the police to stand up and wave our hands and go, but we're different, we're different, we're different. But we really truly are different in the way that we conduct business in our department. And so I do think that, changes and concessions should be made for those employees so that they feel like they're getting a fair and consistent treatment, or at least they're being thought of as being the employee that's here when nobody else is around. So to reiterate, on this policy, yes, it is a needed change because it needs to be cleaned up. But I do think that it could be cleaned up even a little bit more, and I think we're going to find some other things as we really dive into these policies and start looking at stuff that we're going to have to come back to you and potentially ask your opinion, as decision makers on how we're going to skin the cat, so to speak, when it comes to these different shift lengths. I will tell you that Springfield Police Department just went to 12s. I was able to get a copy of their merit rules and their contract, and I was able to look over how they address that. They pay their employees on 8s, 10s, and 12s differently when it comes to holiday pay. So if you're a 12-hour employee, you accrue at 12 hours rate, whereas 10s and 8s are done differently as well. I think it's a good model. I think it's a good basis on what we could do. And I'd be certainly willing to work on that. I have been given some direction from the city administrator to consider the effects of adding hours, benefits hours, to our personnel or our calendar, so to speak, and what that would do financially and what it would do for personnel as far as manpower and staffing, because every time you give time off, it does have these additional effects. And sometimes we've been a little short-sighted and not looking at all those. Well-intentioned changes you fixed one thing, but you created two different problems because we didn't take a more comprehensive look at how that all plays out. So that's a very long explanation to what I think. I hope I answered. Do you have any questions about any of that?
So are you okay with the 8 and the 10 hours? As far as the,
My recommendation would be not get rid of 10s. It would be 8s, 10s, and 12s. And you
Okay.
would accrue at that rate,
Okay.
depending on how you, what shift you're
How many
being placed on.
holidays are there, Amanda?
so I wanted to know.
11.
So that's, yeah, if you give 12-hour employees 12 hours of holiday, that's an extra week off that they
I will
get.
tell you, I
through the
ran a
year.
report earlier that shows, so we do pay out our holidays for our police officers at the end of the year
give
that are
11 holidays.
unused.
Seems like you guys have a holiday like every other
Well, not all
day.
holidays are great big holidays, though.
We barely have one a month.
You have at least one a month.
What do you got?
There's at least one.
You got a couple in December and a couple in, oh, I guess you do have to work Friday on Thanksgiving. don't you? We should give everybody an extra.
I don't get
There you
Fridays
go.
off.
Make them 12 and then that makes more sense.
So that being said, with the accrual that we have now, which are 8 and 10 hours for our officers, whatever is unused at the end of the year, we do pay out, so they do get the monetary value of that. We paid out a total of 2,147 hours of holiday time that was not used to our officers, unused, which equates to $49,852 at the end of the year. There were 9 officers on this list that had all of their holidays paid out. So I find it hard sometimes whenever we're
Choice
going-
that's a choice on their part.
when we're going
To not
through
take the
this,
holiday, so.
to say that they don't have enough time to make up for the 8 and 10 hours, when we give them the holidays that they can choose from. But that's just being said, I mean, that's just, I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, that's the line I have to write.
Because they're the only ones that get that option, right, to get paid out if they don't use it,
Yeah.
right?
So basically what we're trying to implement here is what you're trying to implement is the same thing for their personal days as well.
We're
Where-
just talking about personal days today.
Right, right.
personal
Basically,
hours.
we're just trying to correct an error that was found and brought to our attention.
Right.
And then we're always reviewing our personnel handbook and making any changes that are needed. So we could go ahead and correct this issue and move forward, and we can get more information from Mr. Campbell.
But
Chief
by
Campbell.
correcting this issue, we'll have to go back and change it again later, possibly, if we.
So
do
I'm
it
under
wrong,
the
what's
understanding that we are already looking into fixing some other issues, but this is something that needs to be fixed now.
Yes.
What's the urgency, though?
The urgency is I have already added the personal holiday as of 1/1, and so we have some officers that have 10 hours sitting out there, and they should really only have 8.
And how long have we been doing that?
It was brought to my attention this year, so I assume last year. I don't think it was the year before because the 12-hour shifts went into place in 2020. So last year.
And how many officers do we have, or how many positions do we have that are 8-hour employees that are getting paid for 10?
As far as I know, I believe there are 8, maybe 9.
So we're looking at 16 total hours,
Mm-hmm.
times how many ever, well, it depends on how many personal days they have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's such an urgency to fix it until we can get it all right.
I agree.
Unless they use the time and they shouldn't have had it.
But that's.
So
how
we
our
wouldn't make
poli-
it retroactive anyway. We wouldn't make any, I don't think
No.
we would want to make
No.
anything
No,
retroactive.
No,
either,
I'm
so-
not asking for any time back. I'm not asking for any of that either. And please know, I'm for our police department. I'm for all of our employees. I'm just trying to correct a wrong.
So there's 11 holidays and one personal day? Is that a personal day?
One
days?
personal day unless you've been here for many years, yes.
Yeah, if you read through that, it tells you how many years you had, 15 years.
At 15 years, you get a
Yes.
second, and 5 years after that, you get
But the
another.
holiday one's a whole separate thing.
This doesn't have anything to do with holidays, correct?
No, this has nothing, this
Okay,
is
then-
only personal days.
Top-
Just personal
oh, well,
time.
this-
Stay on topic.
This only has to do with, oh, it doesn't have to do with
Right,
holidays.
but what-
Yeah,
what I
okay,
was getting at,
misunderstood that completely
Mayor.
then.
The only reason we brought holiday into it is because to make up for a 12-hour shift, you can choose a couple of hours from your holiday time
Yeah.
to make that a full shift.
Like we said, we wouldn't make this retroactive to hours you've already given them anyway, so we got till next year to fix this problem.
You
How many-
do, but
how
then
many
you're
people do
paying
we have
out.
on 10 hours?
Well, we are gonna pay it out anyway, because you already gave them the hours.
No. If we make this change today, I will go back and take the 2 hours from them,
Oh,
yes.
no.
Let's-
We don't
no,
want you to
no,
do
no.
that,
If it
because
hasn't
you've
been
already given
used-
them,
You've
given
already
it to
given it to
them.
them.
Yeah, no.
That's up to
I-
you.
no,
I mean, because if they've
That's
not used
a
it,
Horrific idea.
I think we-
If I saw you taking away hours from me, I would be very upset.
Exactly.
Yes, I say.
I mean, and I think that
Yes.
we've already got a lot of upset officers with some of the other, the changes that we made last month too, so.
Okay, does anyone, okay, thank you, Amanda. We appreciate the information you provided to us.
bet.
We will open up the public hearing if anyone else would like to speak to this
We
item.
love you, Amanda.
And we'll close the public hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve this? We don't think, nobody wants to make a motion to approve this, I don't think.
Not right now.
I don't think so. Okay. So no motion being given, we will move on to the next thing. And we'll work on this later. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, I misunderstood that completely. I thought it was about holiday time and not about just the
Well,
personal time that
so-
they already got.
So the thing on that is the holiday is written the same way, is
Yes.
that 8-hour
So we need to
employees
fix the
get 8
whole
hours.
thing altogether.
So, and
Yes.
the 10-hour and 12-hour employees get 10 hours, and I mean, so, and that was changed
Yeah.
a while back, and then last month we did the whole, didn't have a whole lot of discussion on it with the change of the overtime and stuff like that, and I think that all needs to be revisited too.
Okay, yep. Sounds good. We'll spend some more time on that and come back with something more comprehensive. Sounds good. All right, move on to the next one, whatever that is. I lost track.
Resolution number 2022-16, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Ozarks Transportation Organization to provide project and construction management services for the Main Street Improvement Project.
Yes, Mayor and Council, included in this year's budget is a capital project for improvements to the North Main corridor from Tracker Road north to Highway CC. For this project, we're going to be utilizing our federal funds that we have allotted to us and administered through the OTO. In past projects, the first item you've seen as part of a project is a program agreement between the city of Nixa and MoDOT in order to get that project kicked off and those funds started to be allocated. This year, we're excited to have an opportunity through the OTO to enter into an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Nixa and OTO to help with some of the administration processes to get through the federal funds and federal highway process necessary to obtain that 80% allotment of our funds back towards that project. Last year, at the direction of the board of directors for the OTO, they hired a new employee and created a new position called a project manager. The sole function of that position is to assist local agencies in working through the federal funds process and the MoDOT process necessary to move these projects forward. The position will serve as a liaison between the local public agency, which in this case would be the city of Nixa, and MoDOT and Federal Highway to help facilitate that grant process and help hopefully, the idea behind it is to move those funds at a much faster pace than has in the past because of that relationship that program manager will have with both the state highway process and the federal process. So this intergovernmental agreement that would be entered into between the city and Nixa and OTO is a no-cost agreement. OTO is providing these services to all their participating members at no cost. As I mentioned, as staff, we are very excited to have the opportunity to work through this process. This is the first year that we'll be utilizing it, and having already worked with this individual whose name is J.D. Stevens with OTO, having already worked with him over the past month, we are already seeing the benefits that this program is going to initiate with his expertise and his relationships he's been able to build with MoDOT and further understand the LPA process and what it takes to get one of these road projects administered and constructed. So staff does recommend approval of the resolution as presented to you.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell me what improvements they're going to do to that section of road?
Sure. It will basically be extending the improvement that you see on Main Street from Aldersgate to Tracker Road. That same improvement, which would be a center turn lane, and the multiple lanes will be extended north to Highway CC.
Okay, does that include, because we talked about that subdivision going in, does that include taking that hillside
Yes.
down? Okay.
Yes. Yep. That does improve a softening of that sight distance that you see from just about 500 feet north of the Tracker intersection.
Okay. Anything with the intersection at CC and Main?
No, the scope of this project ends where our administration ends, which is basically at the drive north of the Carpet.
Okay.
There's that street at the Carpet. From there, that turns into a state corridor. Now, on a kind of a segue to this process, we have been working with the OTO and with MoDOT to make them aware of the improvements that we're making, and in conjunction with that, they're looking at making improvements to the Highway CC corridor to alleviate any congestion concerns that are there.
Because I know people are going to ask about that when they see stuff going on.
Yep. We're very hopeful that MoDOT will be able to make improvements in tandem with our improvements that we're making to Main Street.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Travis.
All right.
And we will open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Oh, man, we did it again.
Again.
I'll get this time.
Justin gets it this time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The same wavelength.
And to the last one.
Resolution number 2022-017, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Decker and DeGood PC for auditing services.
Good evening. As you are aware, we have an external audit done every year. In the past, we have just used the letter of engagement from the auditor as sort of our agreement for services, but going forward, we feel like a more formal contract is in order, and so the contract spells out very specifically the charges and attaches the exhibit of the letter of engagement as far as the scope of services go. And this is just kind of a formality for that process. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank you, Jennifer. And we'll open the public hearing. Close public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There was no argument over the second, so I wasn't sure what to do.
We got our timing down.
It was too
No,
fast.
okay. All right. That is the last thing on the agenda. Anything else from staff?
I do, I have one thing. If it's okay with you all, I would like to, the next time I present financial reports, to change the budget summary to look more like that budget dashboard that I prepared in the budget, just so we're kind of consistently looking at our expenses. So if that's okay with you, I would like to make that one change to that one report. Is that so?
Anything else? Anything from council? I was going to ask about liaison reports, but we'll worry about that another day, because it's getting,
Well, you
Late.
have a report.
huh? You did liaison report.
We had a liaison report?
No, not tonight, but to plan the next ones, because we don't have any future planned.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, your next meeting, Darlene.
Yeah. You ready?
All right. Go for it, Mr. Peterson.
Karen has something.
I move that the city council go into closed session under section 610, 021, 3, and 13 of RSMO so that council may discuss the hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of an employee and any individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to the employee. I also move that the closed session records here too, and any votes taken by the city council during the session shall be closed under section 610, 021 RSMO, and that the city council shall stand adjourned after the closed session.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrad.
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orf.
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Thank you all.